Hey guys, welcome to Cut the Waffle Tutoring. In today's video we will be looking at the importance of the specification. The specification is a document provided by examination boards such as AQA, Edexcel and OCR. It provides a comprehensive list of everything that you can be tested on in your summer exams, hence it is important to understand what it is. There is a specification specific for every single subject. In this video we will be looking at the following three things. Number 1, how to access the specification. Number 2, understanding the specification. And number 3, using the specification to plan revision and to use it as a checklist. So first of all, we will be looking at how to access the specification. In this video, we will look at the specification for GCSE Physics under the AQA exam board. But you can use any other subject as a template, so you can use GCSE Design and Technology as a template, for example. So first thing first, we want to go into Google. We want to type in GCSE Physics Specification at a glance AQA. As you can see, the first result here, it says GCSE Physics Specification at a glance AQA, exactly how we typed it up, and we want to open this result here. What we do then is we scroll down a bit further and we can see here there's a download option. So you want to click on this. This will open a new document in another tab. What you can now do with this new document is you can either save it onto your documents folder in your PC, or you can save it as a bookmark. So in this case I'm going to save it as a bookmark. This will allow you to access the specification at a much quicker pace than to type it up and download it again, etc. So obviously I'm on the PC right now, I'm not able to edit, so I'm going to go into my iPad, and on there I'll be able to draw and explain how to use the specification. But as of right now, we've covered the part on how to access the specification. Before we move on to how to use the GCSE specification, I'd like to briefly outline the 4 tiers that students are ranked in. For the GCSE Sciences, students are either put in examination for double science or triple science. As the name implies, with double science you obtain 2 GCSEs once you sit your summer exams, whereas with triple science you get 3 GCSEs. Now, double science and triple science are further split into 2 more tiers. So for double science you've got foundation tier and you've got higher tier. For triple science you've also got foundation tier and higher tier. So looking at the foundation tier for double science, you obtain 2 GCSEs because of the double science, and with foundation tier the maximum grade you can obtain is grade 5. Whereas with the higher tier, the maximum grade you can obtain is a grade 9. The same concept applies with the triple sciences, where the maximum grade you can obtain is a grade 5, whereas with the higher tier, the maximum grade you can obtain is a grade 9. The reason it's important to know which tier you are is because certain parts of the specification apply to certain students, and we can know this by certain prefixes. So there are 2 prefixes that are commonly found in the specification, and these are HT only and physics only. So for foundation tier students, none of these 2 prefixes apply. So there's no HT only and there's no physics only. For higher tier, HT only applies to it, but physics only does not apply to it. For triple science foundation tier, HT does not apply to it, whereas physics only does apply to it. And with triple science higher tier, HT applies to it and physics only applies to it. What this means for triple science higher tier students is that everything in the specification could be asked in the exam. We will go over this concept of HT only and physics only later in more detail, but as of right now it's good to have an overview of what are the different rankings for different students, and if you don't know this information you should ask your science teacher for this information. So previously we've talked about how to access the specification, and I've shown you a demonstration of this on my PC, and then I explained the different rankings for GCSE science students. Now we will be looking at what information the specification provides. So I've opened the specification on my iPad, and if I scroll down to page number 3, we can see there is a subject content box. This provides the 8 topics that you will learn for GCSE physics, and as you can see here, this topic here is only for triple science students, which means that for non-triple science students or double science students there are only 7 topics that you will need to learn. Let's go through an example topic in order to explain how the specification works. So for this one I'm going to choose at random forces. So we'll scroll down to forces. So first of all, what we have is the main heading. This is indicated by 1 decimal point here. Then we have the subheading, which is indicated by 2 decimal points, and then we've got a further subheading which is indicated by 3 decimal points. So the first heading, or the main heading, is the subject overview, and as I've mentioned before, there are 7 main topics for GCSE physics, and this is for double science students, whereas triple science students actually have to do 8 main topics. So looking here, we've got the subheading here, and then we've got a further subheading. And we can tell whether the further subheading belongs to which subheading by looking at the first 3 digits if they correspond to one another. Sorry about that. So here we can see the first 3 digits are the same, and then we've got an extra digit here, so that's number 1. Then we've got number 2, number 3, number 4, and then here is a new subheading because it's a 3 digit and it's in point 2 instead. So it's a new subheading. So going back to the first further subheading, we can see here there are 2 boxes. We've got the content box and the key opportunities for skill developments. This is not really that useful, but looking at the content box, we can see here for this example for scalar and vector quantities, we can see that there are 3 sentences that I've highlighted here. The first sentence saying that scalar quantities have a magnitude only, vector quantities have a magnitude and a direction, and the third thing talking about representation of vector quantities. The first sentence talks about scalar quantities and how it only has one feature, which is the magnitude. This could come up as a definition question in the exam. The second statement talks about vector quantities and how it has 2 features, which is a magnitude and a direction, and this can also be asked in the exam as a definition question. And the third one is a diagram question. So in the exam they could represent a diagram of a moving car, for example, and show that it's moving this way. The length of the arrow is the magnitude, and then the direction of the arrow, this is the direction of the vector quantity. What this means here overall is that for scalar and vector quantities, the following 3 are the only 3 things they can ask about. If they ask anything else related to scalar and vector quantities, that means it's encompassed within another further subheading. If not, they can never ask you about stuff that are not in this content box for this particular topic. Now, before we talked about the 4 different tiers that students are ranked in, and I'm going to show you how on the specification it specifies the different contents for the different tiers of students. So if we scroll a bit down to 4.5.14 at resultant forces, we can see here we've got the normal sentences here, and then we've got a special part here. It says HT only, and we've mentioned this before. As for HT only, so we've got this box here, which is what it includes. We've got this box here, and we've got this box here. What this means is that for foundation tier students, so that is double science, I'll just do it abbreviated, and triple science F and F, the following two are the only things they will be examined about. Whereas for double science higher tier and triple science higher tier, they could be asked about the following 6 statements here. Meaning that foundation students can only be asked about the first 2 statements within the content box, and this is foundation students for double science and foundation students for triple science. Whereas higher tier students need to cover all 6 statements in the content box, and this is for double science higher tier and triple science higher tier. So as we can see here, the prefix here of HT only indicates which types of students need to learn which types of content within the specification itself. Now here we've looked at an example for HT only. If we scroll down all the way to momentum, which is 4.5.7, we'll see an example of physics only. So let's scroll down. Sorry, I've scrolled a bit too down. Here it is. Okay, momentum. So first of all, we will highlight the prefixes that we found. So we can see there's a HT only here, there's a physics only here, and there's a physics only here. So what this indicates is that momentum 4.5.7, everything within 4.5.7, so you've got 4.5.7.1, 4.5.7.2 and 4.5.7.3 is higher tier only, meaning that it cannot be examined in foundation tiers, and that's for double and triple science. Foundation tier, double, triple is no. If we scroll down a bit further, for example here in conservation of momentum, we can see that there's a particular part here that says physics only, which means that up until this point, this can be examined in the double science higher tier, whereas this here can be examined in the triple science higher tier. This and this and this. You've got to remember the concept that triple science higher tier covers everything. Now if we look at 4.5.73, we can see that it says physics only in the heading itself, which means that everything in the content box is for triple science students only. But remember, for 4.5.7, which we've seen over here, it also says higher tier, which means that this box here is only for triple science higher tier students, if that makes sense. Now that we have covered the different tiers that students are placed in and how to read the specification according to the tier that you are put in, we will now look at another important concept, and this is called required practicals. So in total for GCSE physics, there are 10 required practicals for triple science students, whereas there's 8 practicals for non-triple science students. And by non-triple science, I mean double science. So it's just an alternative word for double science, I guess. So let's look at an example of a required practical. As we can see here, required practical 8. It says make observations to identify the suitability of apparatus to measure the frequency, wavelength and speed of waves in a ripple tank and waves in solid. These required practicals will be performed in your schools, but it does not mean that it will not be examined within the exam itself. So what you will need to be able to remember is describing how to set up the experiment, including the apparatus involved and the instruments involved, explaining how to extrapolate results from the experiments, being able to perform calculations from the results of the experiments as well as through equations, drawing graphs to represent the results, and being able to explain scientifically why certain events occur in these experiments. We will be doing videos on required practicals, so you don't have to worry about this. Another thing that they can ask you about in the exams is certain experiment-related terminologies like systematic errors, etc., which we will also cover in future videos. Now that we have covered how to understand the specification, we will move on to the final section, which is using the specification to plan revision and to use it as a checklist. As we saw before, because the specification tells you what you need to know, when it comes to preparations for your summer exams, you can actually print off a copy of the specification and go through every topic, and once you are confident with that topic, you can take it off the specification. The specification is actually a very underrated tool that many students do not often utilize because initially it looks very complicated. With this video, I hope that you guys have understood how to access the specification, how to interpret it, and how to use it to plan your revision. In this channel, I will be using the specification quite a lot because it is an excellent tool to highlight what is necessary to learn and what is not. I hope you have all learned valuable information from this video, and if you did find this video useful, please like and subscribe and make sure to hit the notification bell to stay notified when we upload a new video. Also, make sure to comment down below if you found the video useful and any ways that I can improve the video to make it more clearer and easier to understand. I'm new to YouTube, and so any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Up until then, have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next video.